Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Needy No More, the podcast dedicated to healing the anxious attachment style. I'm your host, anxious attachment style coach and author, Chris Ratcliffe. I've helped thousands of people across 6 continents to end the cycle of anxious attachment through my books, workshops, digital downloads, and coaching program. I'm excited to carry on that mission here on the podcast, sharing tools and techniques, principles, and practices for you to explore on your journey to growing more secure. Today is a very special day on the show. I have a guest here who is somewhat hard to introduce because we have such an interesting and complex relationship that's taken a lot of different forms. Her name is Christina. And Christina and I met several years ago, maybe 2022. You can correct me on this, Christina. I'm not sure.
I think late 2021.
Wow. Okay. So we met a few years ago when she reached out to me for coaching. From there, after she finished the coaching program, I hired her on my team to help me connect with other clients and to enroll people in the program. And she even did some coaching for me as well. Christina is also a great success story for what coaching can do for your life. And she is now married to her partner, Joey. And we'll talk about all of the above today, but Christina is now a really close friend of mine, and we talk all the time, and I'm really happy to have you on the show, Christina. Thanks for coming on.
Of course, thank you for having me here. It's a pleasure and honor to speak with you, of course, in this forum, but also connecting with your listeners who I know are just waiting to hear more about our journey together.
Why don't we start at the beginning? It's the most natural place to start, I think. Tell us about where you were at in your life, what was going on, how you were feeling when you reached out to me to set up just an intro conversation.
Yeah, I was in a really dark place, probably one of the darkest in my life. And I think my environment at the time definitely reflected how I felt on the inside. I mean, I remember I was going through a breakup with a partner that I had 3 years. We lived together. We had a dog together. It was very serious. I thought it was going to end in marriage, which of course now in hindsight, he wasn't the right partner for me. But fast forward, I'm in my apartment where I'm living completely alone for the first time. I always lived with roommates or other people, never completely on my own. And being an anxious attacher, that is probably one of the hardest and scariest things when we are consistently thriving off connection and wanting connection. So I ended up moving in alone. I had a mattress on the ground and like a bin of clothes. It was really nothing. And I was wearing the same hoodie for 3 days in a row. I was not taking care of myself. I was really depressed and just scrolling TikTok as one does. And I came across Chris. And at this time, content like Chris's was not really in my algorithm. It was probably the first of its kind when he was speaking about anxious attachment styles and how having people leave you is almost a self-fulfilling prophecy he was speaking about. And I remember watching his video and going, wait, there's other people in this world that think these things, because a lot of the things that he said, that you said in your content, I went on your page and looked at more. These are feelings and thoughts that I had in my head for years that I felt too ashamed to admit out loud to my friends or anybody, telling them how desperate I felt for connection and the lengths I was willing to go to make a relationship work. Some things I still have never said out loud of the things that I have done to make relationships work. And I think, Chris, you were really the only person that I've ever known at that time that really I felt saw that piece of me that I felt ashamed of. So naturally, I booked a call with you. I really didn't know what it meant. I wasn't super familiar with, coaching in this type of avenue. I didn't really understand what the call was or what it was for, but all I knew is I needed to talk to you, and whatever that equated to, I was willing to try to find a way to make work. And I had my first call with you. I remember having thoughts of, wow, this person really understands me and really cares in a way that no therapist did I ever feel so seen by a therapist before. And I knew I had to work with you and I had to make a change. I couldn't live the way I was living anymore. And yeah, of course, we went on that second call and it was pretty much a done deal for me. I didn't really care about anything of how to make it happen. I remember spending my last dollars to make it happen because the moving in alone was incredibly expensive. There were a lot of things happening, but I just knew I couldn't live this way anymore. And I had to find a way to make it work. And I did. And then from there, my life really changed.
It did. It did. And we'll definitely get to some of those changes because you've really come full circle. But
Yeah,
I want you to talk also about what your experience was like in the program. You did group coaching,
I
which I'm
did.
not currently offering, but is very similar to in terms of, conceptually and exercise wise, what's in the one on one version of the program. What did you
Mhm.
get out of it? Like, what did you learn along the road, so to speak?
I learned a lot of things. I mean, I still speak with a couple of the people that were in the program with me. They were all lovely people at different points in their life, experiencing different journeys. And that made me feel so much less alone. It was my favorite time of the week to have these sessions because I felt like I was with people who understood me. That was a big piece. I was looking for camaraderie, I was looking to not feel alone. I learned a lot about myself, and I know everybody talks about, "Oh, that must be from your childhood," or "Oh, that must be childhood trauma," and that's something that a lot of people say these days, and I've heard that before, but I never really thought about the extent of how much it affected me until I did your program. There were a lot of different exercises where I had to talk about my role models. I'm thinking about who in my life was kind of mirroring the relationship or marriage that I was looking for, what was involved in those relationships. Taking care of myself was not really a thing. I was eating like a cube of cheese to not pass out. I mean, I was not eating full meals. I was on a very off sleep schedule. I was self medicating with marijuana edibles almost every night because I didn't want to feel my feelings. I didn't really know how to regulate my nervous system. I was doing everything I could to avoid the feelings so I can get through the day. And it was the first time that I really started thinking of a routine for myself. So I started going on walks every day. I started going to the gym a few times a week and I started eating 2 meals a day at least. I was not treating my body and my mind like a temple as somebody who was ready to even be in a healthy relationship. I was attracting exactly the way I was treating myself. And that was a big piece of what I learned. How am I possibly going to be in a healthy relationship with a secure partner when I am almost relying on them to take care of me? Because when I'm by myself, that's the default. I think self care was a really important piece. That was huge for me in becoming healthier for not only myself, but for the future relationship I was really looking for.
Those small incremental things add up over time. I've always said that. That's always been my approach to this work. The small
Yeah.
stuff, because a lot of people aim for big breakthroughs, and that is well intentioned, but it's actually your habits and your routines that get you there or not. And so hearing you talk about going from not eating so well, not sleeping so well, to getting those foundations in place for yourself so you could build on top of them, it might not be an immediate connection or
Right.
something that someone thinks about when they're healing their anxious attachment or healing from trauma. The consistency part of this is what a lot of people overlook because the small stuff accumulates via the consistency to create the breakthrough that they are seeking. Obviously, there are going to be many people listening to this and watching who are not familiar with coaching, who have never even reached out to anyone to
Right.
potentially help them outside of a therapy environment. In your experience, both as the client and as someone working with my clients, what do you think people get hung up on when it comes to taking a leap of faith to do this work? What holds them back? How can they work through some of that to get the help that they might need?
There's a few things that consistently came up when I had conversations with folks who maybe felt fear or not ready. And A lot of times things would come up, finances, time. There's no opportune time to heal, right? We're not all just sitting here with all this time. Often you have to implement it into your life and make it a priority. And when I would dig more into the real reason, it was the lack of self belief that they could follow through. And that's something that I can really understand because I had the same beliefs. Now, I think something important to think about when it comes to people considering this kind of work is you're really the only person who can decide if you want to keep living the way you live or not. And you could keep doing what you're doing, but likely you wouldn't have been speaking to myself or Chris if you were okay with that. So I think a lot of times it took a little bit of encouragement and holding someone's hand to get through the finish line because it's really scary. And a lot of times as an anxious attacher, we don't trust our own judgment. We don't trust our own thoughts. We're always second guessing and making a decision can be really difficult. So I think at the end of the day, there's always going to be a fear for different reasons, whether it's what if I won't implement the work? What if I have a bad sense of judgment once again? Those are all legitimate thoughts. They all make sense. But at the end of the day, it kind of comes back to the same question. If you've tried therapy, you've tried calling your friends when you're upset, you have tried journaling, but maybe you haven't done it consistently enough, there's clearly something lacking in your support that is making it so you can't follow through. It's not always you. Sometimes it's just you're doing things super sporadically to try to get temporary relief when really that's not the problem. If you just journal for 1 or 2 days, you're not going to just wake up and be securely attached. You have to build small habits over time. And when you work with someone like Chris, the gentle reminders of you may not see the progress that you're making, but it's happening and you need to trust that it's happening and you need to keep doing the work because then you blink and you're in your first healthy relationship with somebody that is actually valuing and respecting you and you wonder how you got there. Well, it's because you actually legitimately committed to be consistent. Even if it wasn't perfect, it's still different than what you did before.
Oh my goodness, there's so much in what you just shared. I just also want to point out the what ifs that you were saying. That is a classic sign of being in a space of doubt and worry and anxiety. So whenever I hear a what if, well, what if this doesn't work? And what if that is anxiety presenting itself. And for someone struggling with anxious attachment, those are natural things to wonder. But
Yeah.
I think it's important to flip that on its head. What if you learn the skills you're hoping to learn? What if this environment of accountability and practicality is
Yeah.
what has been lacking? What if you do know all of this? So it's not an information problem, but it's a transformation problem. You need someone to help hold
Mm,
your feet to the fire so that you actually show up day in and day out. And that's part of why the investment level is what it is, too. You have real skin in the game.
yeah.
It is a bigger investment than just paying session by session with a therapist, or maybe not paying at all if you're not coming out of pocket for that expense. So this is something that completely flips things on its head. And I know for a lot of anxious attachers, there's shame in the room a lot of times that
Yes.
makes us think we're not good enough to invest in ourselves. And quite frankly, we always prioritize everybody else over ourselves
Always.
in our relationships. So this is sometimes hard to get past for people. Like, am I worth that? Is this actually going to help? But you get out what you put in, as I remind people all the time. If you're concerned about that, that is actually something you have control over. Do the exercises, do the daily nervous system practice, reach out to me for messaging support. And if you show up for your sessions, in addition to all of those things, you are going to experience some degree of transformation.
I almost feel like another piece that people really struggle with is I always tell my friends, you have FOSS, fear of success. So it a lot of times being an anxious attacher, I know for me, it was my personality for a really long time. My habits, my trauma responses, it was literally just who I was. And I was terrified of not knowing who I am anymore and having to rebuild from that from a place of being healthy? What if I'm not funny anymore with my self-deprecating jokes? What if people don't like me anymore because I'm starting to set boundaries? It's easier this way. These are all thoughts that constantly went through my head of I don't know if I really am ready to change. Is it really that bad? And I mean, the answer for me was like, yeah, it is. But yeah, I just kind of wanted to point that out because that's kind of an unspoken thing that I thought about a lot. A lot of people, they really lean into their anxious attachment or their mental illnesses. I mean, the things that they're struggling with as being their personality. And
It does start to become an identity over time that we then also become attached to. And that attachment part of it is important to name because it speaks to the experience, whether it be with a romantic partner or with ourselves, of even if it's not enjoyable, it is familiar. The nervous system seeks it out, it recreates it in the hopes of resolving it. And yet, without different ingredients, without something changing, the outcome only repeats itself. And I actually recently had someone reach out to me for coaching after 3 or 4 years since our initial consultation, and she enrolled in the program and is having a lot of realizations. One
well,
of those realizations is I could have done this 3 or 4 years ago and been in an even better place by now, but she wasn't ready, and that's okay. Everyone has to do their own work at their own time or not.
yeah,
That's also a choice. But I like to point that out just because you should listen to the timing of your life. And if you're feeling called to expand your support system, then there is something compelling there. It doesn't mean you have to work with me necessarily, but
sure.
it does mean that the support system is lacking something.
Yes.
And if you revert back to that, that lack is still probably going to be there if you don't have a roadmap or anything like that. Now, I want to transition to talking about your success specifically. You're in such a different place than you were previously.
Mm-hmm.
It hasn't been a road without its own challenges or bumps, let's say.
No.
Recall when you were putting yourself back out there and dating, you had some encounters with folks that were not ideal. So, talk to us about your dating experiences and putting yourself back out there and how you met Joey and how you knew that he was worth continuing to see and invest in, because there
Yeah.
was distance there too.
There was. And I'm going to be completely honest because there was a lot of realizations through my healing to becoming more securely attached. And that included me messing up several times. But the thing is, I got back on track faster, realizations happened faster, and situations that could have ended into a relationship like I would before, I chose to end it and move forward. So although I made mistakes, it still ended up in a different outcome, which is great. But naturally, when my ex and I broke up, my first thought was, okay, well, I have to find another boyfriend. Embarrassingly enough, I always joked around with my friends. I've had a Valentine every year since I was 11. And it's crazy because I look back at some of the assignments I did when I was a kid, and it asked, what do you want to be when you grow up? And people were saying, a doctor, a writer, an astronaut. I looked back at one of them and it was so sad. It said to be loved. I think about that all the time. And that's how I led my life. And that pattern, even when I started my program initially with you, I still had that thought of how am I going to find my next support system? How am I going to find my next support system? Who is it going to be? Who's easily accessible? Who do I think I can get to like me? These are all real thoughts that I had in my head. And I want to say that the first date that I had after exiting my long-term relationship was a few weeks after it ended when I moved into my new space because I was desperate for relief. And I remember going out and having a great time with this person. They were somebody that I knew that they randomly messaged me on Facebook. I didn't reach out to them. So, of course, in my mind, I'm thinking, well, I didn't reach out to them. I didn't do anything weird. They reached out to me, so why not? This person wasn't ready to have a relationship. Truthfully, I wasn't either. But I desperately just wanted someone to cling on to. And we went out dancing and we got tacos. And we had a great conversation. And I remember the next morning, he didn't text me. or call me. And I asked myself, why wouldn't he message me? That was a great night. A few days go by. I think by day 4, I couldn't take it anymore. And I called him up and I said, "Hey, I thought we had a great time. I just wanted to check in to see if we're on the same page because I haven't heard from you. I left the ball in your court and I'm just wanting to see if you have any intention of wanting to move forward or if you're just not feeling like this is for you." And that's something I didn't do before. I would just suffer in silence. So that was a big piece for me being able to pick up the phone and do it from a place of empowerment as opposed to desperation. Because at that point, I was thinking, well, of course I want connection, but I'm actually not desperate for it. I want to hear what he is looking for and see if we're even in alignment because I'm feeling like we're not. He just said, "You know what? You're a really strong person and I actually really like you, but I'm driving for Uber right now. I'm between jobs. I see how successful you are. I don't feel comfortable moving forward because I don't feel confident enough in myself to be able to have a partner like you yet."
Wow.
So whether that was true or not, it gave me clarity to move forward.
And you listen to your own need for clarity by reaching out. And I think that self-honoring piece is important to name here.
Yes.
So after some of these initial experiences, how long did it take for you until you met Joey?
Yeah, I mean, I was dating for probably about a year. I went on like, quite a few dates and I had a great time. I'm very social. I could probably find a way to connect with a paper bag. So for me, even if it wasn't a romantic connection, I still had a great time. And there were several instances where somebody wanted a relationship with me when I didn't want it back. And that was crazy for me because I always felt like I was the one chasing. It was almost this sense of empowerment that I'm not used to, but I didn't want it to be hurtful to other people. And the thing is, I found during this time that I didn't have to choose one or the other. I could still have emotional connection and have a casual relationship and still enjoy that person's presence, but know that they were not a long-term fit for me. What? That was
Yeah.
weird.
Gray area. Hello.
Yes, it was really interesting for me. And I found it really difficult having those conversations with people that wanted that relationship with me, but I enjoyed their presence, but knew they weren't a long term fit. And I felt for the first time that I was in the shoes of how other people must have felt with me in the past. I didn't really understand the fact that somebody could say to me, "Hey, I really like you and I enjoy your presence, but I just don't see a future." No comprende. I had no idea how that could be possible. What do you mean you like me and you don't see a future? That makes no sense. Well, I experienced it for the first time and it does make sense. It was just something I didn't experience before. I only was really dating one person at a time. And right before I met Joey, I was seeing someone for a few months and I kind of dipped back into my anxious attachment tendencies of people pleasing, particularly. I didn't feel like I wanted to date this person. They were incredibly persistent for months, and it didn't scare me. So I thought to myself, well, maybe this is a potential of being a secure partner, and I'm not feeling that fire inside because usually that's what I feel. I don't feel grossed out by him or anything, but I'm not really into it the way that he is. And I remember him asking me 2 to 3 times, and the third time, I just told myself, I'm going to say yes. I'm just gonna say yes, and I'm just gonna go all in and see what happens. This was like a 3-month stint with this gentleman named, let's call him Jorge. I convinced myself I was really in it because I wanted things to be different for me, and I was questioning my own judgment. He told me he was in love with me and all these things, and it wasn't there for me. And I ended it after a few months, and I just was like, after this experience, I am changed. I cannot do this again. I have to stick to how I really feel. I ended up taking a small break from my online business to go back into corporate. And that's where I met Joey, my husband. And this is when things were fizzling out with that gentleman I was dating for a few months. And Joey and I did not exchange phone numbers. He knew that I was kind of seeing someone. I remember thinking, oh, he's really nice. He was constantly asking me, how can I help you? Is everything making sense to you? Do you want to hop on Zoom and eat lunch together and I can walk you through some of the systems? He was just very friendly and very helpful. And I remember thinking that I thought he was really cute, but I didn't do anything about it. It was the first job that I was ever fired from in my life. And I went back to running my business and I got a message on LinkedIn from Joey saying, "Hey, I'm really surprised that you were let go. You were the best performer on the team. I really looked up to all the things that you did and that you brought from doing in your own business. I think that leadership was just kind of threatened by that and ended up letting you go. And if you want to still connect, here's my phone number, but no pressure." And I was like, hmm, interesting. Okay. We texted a little bit and both of our grandparents were actually about to pass at the exact same time. And we were both very close to this particular grandparent. So we were talking, but we were both kind of going through the ends of the life of an important piece of our family system. It was a hard time, but we helped each other through it and we ended up FaceTiming. And we were FaceTiming every day for over a month. We did intentional dates where we would play that. It's like a little red box. Are we really strangers? Is that what they? Yeah.
Yes.
We played that, and we would have wine on FaceTime, and we had intentional ways of getting to know each other as well. It wasn't just talking. Oh, we had similarities in regards of what we were looking for. He said, "My intention is to find my wife at this time in my life," which I've never heard a man say that to me before. What do you mean?
Hmm.
Everyone's like, "I just want to catch a vibe and see how it goes." So I said my intention is finding my life partner. That's what I'm looking for. So thanks for being straightforward with that to make sure that we're in alignment. And it was refreshing that I wasn't the one who had to push to understand where he was at. He's a fellow anxious attacher. I could kind of tell by the way that we connected. So we both were in pretty consistent communication, but we're giving the other person space to live our lives. We just really hit it off. I felt very comfortable with him. I felt very safe, and we got to know each other very well pretty early on, mostly because we were long distance, right? So what would equal dating in person, we surpassed that pretty quickly because all we had was conversation. I went to Atlanta because I was going to see one of my clients anyways, and we decided that we both wanted to spend the weekend together in an Airbnb, and we would decide what our comfortability was in regards of sleeping next to each other. We had an option for us to sleep separately. If there wasn't a connection in real life, we would be friends. So we were both on the same page. At the very least, we know that we like each other platonically. So if this doesn't end up being something, we're open to the other person sharing, "Hey, this doesn't feel right," or "I'm not feeling that connection, but let's finish out the weekend as friends and still be on good terms." So that made me feel comfortable. And of course, sharing my location with my girlfriends. So,
Sure.
it went really well. And he did things no one's ever done for me before. He had a whole note of my favorite snacks, my favorite activities. He was keeping track during our conversations, but he wasn't showing it to me. I saw it by accident when he was looking at it in the corner by himself. And he had all of my favorite snacks lined up for me. He brought me flowers when he picked me up from the airport. He opened my doors for me. He bought us candles for when we had breakfast together. Just very intentional and very kind and not performative. So I could just tell it was who he was as a person. And yeah, we had an amazing time together. And then he came to visit me in Chicago. We talked about what we wanted to do to move forward. I didn't really want to move to Atlanta. We both didn't want to keep doing long distance. I think it was just hard on us mentally and anxiety wise. It was just difficult being apart from each other. So we were trying to decide what we wanted to do. And he made the decision that he wanted to move to Chicago. And it was an interesting time because I was trying to do things differently than I've ever done because I've moved very quickly in relationships in the past out of scarcity and fear that they would leave. And I remember us eating together at a restaurant, and this is the third month that we were dating and knowing each other pretty much. We decided to sign a lease together in Chicago because I was moving from my one bedroom and I was going to move alone. But we just made the decision. And I told him about my anxious attachment journey and how I was concerned that I was moving too fast. We ended up having an agreement that if things didn't work out, he had an aunt and uncle that lived about 30 minutes away. I was able to afford the lease on my own, and that I would keep the apartment and he would go live with his aunt and uncle until he could go back to Atlanta. So we did have a in-depth conversation of how things would go, and it ended up working out really well. I wouldn't necessarily recommend it, but I really wanted to spend time with him, and I wanted him to feel supported making that kind of move across the country. I felt that asking him to live completely on his own in a place that he did not know at all was unfair. I felt that I wanted to be there to support him because I wouldn't have asked him or even invited him to move to Chicago if I didn't see a future with him. So it was a decision that I had to make based on what I knew and felt at the time of what I felt was best. And it wasn't coming from a place of fear of losing him. It was coming from a place of I can see a future with this person and I want them to feel supported and loved while making a move this big. I know I would probably want that same support. So this is the decision that we are making as a couple that feels best to us. People thought we were nuts for a few months, and then his family met me and my family met him, and once they saw us together and they met me and him, his family went, "Okay, I get it." Okay. And my mom said, "Okay, I get it." Once everyone saw us together, it was very clear, okay, this makes sense. This isn't some weird random playing house situation for a couple months and they're going to come back brokenhearted, which could have happened, but you can kind of tell the difference when someone's just kind of moving too fast. They don't know each other at all. It's not intentional. It was a very grounded feeling decision. So that was really healing for me to go. I made this in a place of security and feeling grounded and having a plan if things didn't work out and feeling safe enough to make that plan with my partner. And then fast forward a year and a half, he proposed and then we got married in December of 2024.
You guys are the cutest. There's so much there that I want to name, and the first is the consideration of one another. At every point, as you're describing, whether it's the Airbnb or moving in together or even the idea of the move,
Yeah.
there's a real consideration of what's best, not just individually, but together as a team, and respecting one another's point of view, perspective, experiences, comfort levels. There's also so much thoughtfulness and intentionality there that is important to name for folks who are potentially dating to have a lifelong partnership, because each of you were able to name that that's what you desired. That's what this was potentially, hopefully, working its way towards.
Yeah.
If that intention hadn't have been set, then maybe the move doesn't make sense. Moving in together doesn't make sense. I mean, you even named that, you saw a future with this person and you want him nearby. I mean, that's the whole point of ending the long distance, right?
Right.
So I hear you about the judgment from the outside in and people thinking you might be crazy or out of your mind or
Mhm.
it's happening too quickly
Yeah.
for their comfort level. But
Sure.
there's so much communication and consideration that happened between the two of you to get you there. And I think a lot of that intentionality, a lot of that consideration is why you are where you are today. There was such a comfort and care and safety that both of you brought to each other. That doesn't mean that it was perfect. It doesn't mean that it was without conflict or disagreement, which is important to name because many
Mhm.
people just assume then that because you're so considerate and thoughtful and intentional, that it means you don't argue or
Right.
disagree,
Right.
which is not true.
Not true.
I talked about this just a couple of episodes ago on what a secure relationship actually looks like.
Mhm.
It's how you repair that matters and how you come back together that
Mhm.
matters, and also how you show up for the conflict and disagreement that matters, and any patterns there. But I just wanted to name those things because I know a lot of people watching and listening are like, how do I get there? I can't find the person. I'm not matching with someone or meeting people that want that kind of depth and intentionality. I also want to name that you had other prospects.
I
You
did have
had
other prospects.
you had other people that really wanted to go the distance with you, and you listened to yourself. Because in the coaching program, for people who don't know, you do a lot of work to identify your needs, your values, your love
Mhm.
languages, and really paint a very clear picture for yourself of who am I? what do I actually need? What are my must-haves in
Mhm.
a partner and partnership? And with that clarity that you brought to your dating life, even if you didn't make the perfect decisions, I'm using air quotes for people who are listening instead of watching, but even if you didn't make the perfect decisions or honor how you were feeling earlier rather than later, you eventually got there and you listened to the clarity that you developed for yourself, that self-awareness that you cultivated in the coaching program. And because of that, when Joey showed up, you were very quickly, I think, able to see this person is different. This
Mhm.
feels more natural, more organic.
Yeah.
You're not having to coach or pursue or chase this person. You're not having to tell them, well, this is what I prefer. He's
Mhm.
already naturally leaned in because of his own anxious attachment tendencies.
Right.
And that's another thing I want to name for people too. An anxious partnership can be beautiful. It can be really healthy and fruitful and deep and meaningful and very fulfilling. And that doesn't mean that you're both 100% secure or insecure. That's not a thing. I've talked about
Yeah.
that a lot on the show. You know that. There's
Yeah.
a degree of security and insecurity that's present in all of us.
Yes.
But there was enough security there, enough fuel in the tank, enough leaned inness from both of you that gave you what you needed to continue.
100%. I couldn't agree more with what you said because something that comes to mind to me of the difference between Joey and I moving together a few months in, I think back to when my ex-partner before Joey and I were together, I was very manipulative out of fear of being left. And that was something that I learned through therapy, through coaching with you, the part that I played. And he was not ready to move in together at all. I remember feeling the stress from that situation and the misalignment and my fear exasperated from knowing that I really wanted it. But it wasn't even from a place of, oh, I really want it because I want to be with this person. I just didn't want to be alone. But there was definitely misalignment in that relationship that I saw later. And I was so willing to push him in a direction he wasn't ready to go in. And that was a huge piece of why the relationship ended because of my fear being so big of being left and being alone. I was willing to do anything to get him on the same page as me when maybe he'd say the words that he was, but in his heart he wasn't. There was a really big difference in how I showed up in the relationship I have with my husband than when I did before I started your program. I mean, I'm two different people.
Do you consider yourself secure now?
It's a great question. Much more secure. I would say who I chose as a partner really makes it easy for me to be secure in my marriage because he doesn't trigger the anxious parts of myself. I do still struggle with anxious attachment professionally and with friendships sometimes, but I would say that I handle things a lot better. The symptoms of shaking, being afraid, not being able to eat due to abandonment or some type of conflict. Instead of it lasting an entire day, it will last 30 minutes, maybe. It's just so much lighter than it was before.
Makes sense. A full day to 30 minutes is a huge improvement.
Oh, yeah. I mean, listen, my productivity has gone up.
I'm sure. Yeah. Well, you're not so depleted. I mean, many of us stay in survival mode and it is exhausting being anxiously attached
Yeah,
all the time.
it
That
is.
kind of level of dysregulation will deplete you significantly. I do think it is important to name it's okay to still struggle with some of this. A lot of these types of patterns tend to stem back to our earliest relationships. And I know we didn't get to it today, but there was some trauma there. I've talked openly about my own trauma on the show. So it's important not to judge ourselves for that, especially if you're watching or listening, depending on where you are on your journey. It is okay to still struggle. Again, incremental improvement, small adjustments that accumulate over time to vastly improve how you manage on a day-to-day level and from moment to moment. You're not derailed by this anymore. You're able to function. You have a very fulfilling life. And I've seen this quote circulate a lot, but I want to name it here. It says that you can tell someone's level of self-love by the partner they choose.
Mm.
and you talking about your marriage now to Joey and the relationship that you have and how calm he makes you, how peaceful it is on the whole, again, not every single second, but that he no longer triggers those parts of you. I think that's a part of the consideration and thoughtfulness too. He knows you at a very deep level and is
Yeah.
considerate to not do that and not go there.
Yeah.
And I think that indicates a very deep level of self-love for you.
Who I ended up ultimately choosing for myself is not the same person that I would have chosen for myself even a few years ago. And you would see the extreme difference. And there's an extreme difference with how I felt about myself and how I feel about myself now. So yeah, that I would say that's completely true.
What would you say to the Christina who was in that one-bedroom apartment with the mattress on the floor? What do you have to say to her now? What do you think she needs to hear from you? Or what
Mm,
would feel empowering to say to her, knowing where you are now and where
Yeah,
that road would eventually lead?
I would tell her, keep holding on. You're going to get to where you're looking to go, even more so. Keep showing up every single day. Things are going to get better. You're a good person. You don't have to keep living this way and you won't. But you have to keep trying every single day. And I know that you will. And I love you. You're worthy of all the love that you've been looking for. That's what I would say.
Beautifully put. What do you have to say to anyone out there who hasn't healed their anxious attachment yet? What's your advice to them?
There's just so much life to live on the other side. I mean, when I think of how I felt when I was in the thick of it, I felt like I was in this tiny little box and I was looking at everyone on the outside moving and smiling, and I'm in this little box that I just couldn't get out of. And for people listening, if you feel like you're in that box and you feel that there's no way out, if you are in a relationship that isn't serving you, if you are trying to find a partner, but you feel like it's hard to find the right person for you, all I can say is that your life will become infinitely better if you make the choice to heal. Keep the good things, but the things that are not serving you, they're they're putting you back in your life. Every day that you decide not to heal from anxious attachment, it's one less day that you're really living. And sometimes it's hard to see what's possible on the other side because you don't think it's possible for you. It's a mountain to climb, but you don't have to do it alone. There's people out there who can absolutely help you. And if you're willing to try your best every day, even if some days 10%, some days 100%, you're still moving that needle forward, you will absolutely begin to live the life that you've always dreamed of, if not better. But there's no better day but today to get started on this journey so you can start living a fulfilling life. Because if you keep living the way that you are now, 10 years are going to pass you by and you're going to wonder why you didn't change anything. And that's really no way to live.
Woo! Yeah, you can't make more time. As I always remind people, not even Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk can buy it. All the money in the world can't buy it.
Correct.
So if you need the support, seek that out. Even if it's not me, find a different coach, find a therapist who really sees you and challenges you and holds you accountable. Find a healing modality that resonates with you. Take a look at your social circle and how they impact your nervous system. Try to surround yourself with people who you feel you can be your genuine self with, who appreciate you, who celebrate you. All very important things that I've talked about on the show before as well. Christina, as we wind toward the end of today's episode, how can people find you?
You can find me on Instagram, Christina Connects. Always happy to talk to a fellow fan of Chris's or somebody who's struggling with anxious attachment. If you want to hear about my experience working with Chris, anything else about my story, more than happy to talk to you or just connect as a fellow human. So that's Christina, Christina, Connects, Connects. And yeah, I'll see you on the other side.
Christina Connects. And for those who are interested in the coaching program, head to crackliff.com/coaching, CRACKLIFFE.com/coaching. Christina, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's so wonderful to see your face again and hear your voice. I know
Thanks
this
for having
convo is
me.
going to resonate with a lot of folks.
Thank you.